You're old, you don't know what you're doing. My son put me in a nursing home to control my $2 million estate. He was in shock, and I cleansed my soul when I took all the money, and the creak of the automatic doors as they sealed me inside felt more final than any slam. You're old, you don't know what you're doing, Michael had sneered, his voice echoing the callousness in his eyes. My only son, my Michael, the one I'd scrimped and saved for, the one I'd believed in with a fierce, unwavering love, and now he'd dumped me in Meadowbrook Assisted Living, a place that smelled faintly of antiseptic and despair, all so he could manage my $2 million estate. Manage. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. Control was the truth of it. Control my money, control my decisions, control the remainder of my life. For the first few weeks I existed in a fog of disbelief and hurt. I'd sit in the communal dining room, the clatter of silverware a constant irritating hum, and watch the other residents. Their eyes held stories, etched deep with time and loss. Some were vibrant, still clinging to life with a stubborn joy. Others were vacant, their spirits already drifting. Was this to be my fate? To wither away in a sterile room, my life's work, the fruits of decades of relentless saving and shrewd investments, slowly being siphoned away by a son who couldn't wait for me to be gone? Michael visited sporadically, always with a forced smile and hollow inquiries about my care. He'd talk loudly about the complexities of managing my portfolio, the expert advisors he'd consulted, all while carefully avoiding my gaze. His wife, Carol, was even worse. Her visits were rarer still, and when she did appear, it was usually with a list of needs: a new car, renovations to their already lavish home, opportunities Michael couldn't pass up. They treated my money as if it were already theirs, an inheritance prematurely granted. Their greed was a tangible thing, a suffocating cloud that hung over our strained interactions. The nurses and aides at Meadowbrook were mostly kind, overworked souls who did their best, but it wasn't home. It wasn't the house I'd built with my own two hands, the garden I'd lovingly tended for 50 years, the rooms filled with memories that whispered in the quiet evenings. Here I was just another resident, another number. My past, my accomplishments, my very identity seemed to fade with each passing day. The breaking point came on my 82nd birthday. Michael and Carol arrived with a cheap store-bought cake and perfunctory wishes. Michael spent most of the visit on his phone, while Carol pointedly admired Mrs. Henderson's diamond earrings. A subtle hint, I knew, about what she expected to inherit. They stayed for less than an hour, their eyes already flitting towards the door. As they were leaving, Michael patted my hand dismissively. Now don't you worry about a thing, Dad. We're taking good care of everything. Good care? They were vultures circling a dying man, picking at his assets before he'd even drawn his last breath. The injustice of it was a physical ache. All those years of sacrifice, the long hours, the careful planning, for this, to be discarded like a worn-out shoe by the very people I'd dedicated my life to providing for? That night, sleep evaded me. My mind, sharp as ever despite my age, raced. I thought about my father, a hard-working immigrant who instilled in me the values of thrift and independence. I thought about my late wife, Sarah, whose unwavering support had been my constant companion. They wouldn't have stood for this, and neither would I. A plan began to form, slow at first, like a seed pushing through hard soil. It was audacious, risky, but the thought of it ignited a spark within me that had been dormant for too long. Michael and Carol thought I was a senile old man, easily manipulated. They underestimated me. They had forgotten the shrewd businessman I once was, the man who built an empire from nothing. They were about to learn a very painful lesson. The old dog, it seemed, still had a few tricks left. My soul felt heavy with the weight of their betrayal, but a new steely resolve was hardening within me. It was time to cleanse it. It was time to take back what was rightfully mine, and in doing so, teach my ungrateful son and his avaricious wife a lesson they would never forget. My first step was subtle, almost invisible. I started observing. I paid close attention to Michael's phone calls during his infrequent visits. Snippets of conversations drifted my way, excited whispers about closing the deal, frustrated sighs about unexpected expenses. Carol's less guarded pronouncements to the nurses were even more revealing. She'd casually mentioned their upcoming European vacation, the new boat Michael was eyeing, the investment opportunity that required a significant cash infusion. Their confidence was astounding, bordering on arrogance. They truly believed they had everything under control. Meanwhile, I cultivated an air of increasing fragility. I'd feign forgetfulness, repeat stories, and express confusion over simple matters. The nurses, bless their hearts, attributed it to my age and adjusted my care accordingly. Michael and Carol, however, lapped it up. "See? I told you he wasn't all there," I overheard Michael say to Carol during one visit, a smug satisfaction in his voice that made my blood boil. Their underestimation was my greatest weapon. Under the guise of needing assistance with my finances, I requested access to my bank statements. Michael, ever so helpful, provided them without a second thought. He probably figured I'd just glance at the numbers and forget them, but I studied them meticulously, my old accountant's mind clicking back into gear. I noted the steady stream of withdrawals, the large sums being transferred to accounts I didn't recognize, the suspiciously vague descriptions of expenses. They weren't just managing my estate, they were systematically dismantling it. My visits to the facility's small library became more frequent. I devoured books on estate law, financial planning, and even online articles about protecting assets from predatory family members. The more I learned, the clearer my plan became. I needed leverage, a way to not only reclaim my money but also to ensure they couldn't touch it again. One afternoon, a new resident arrived at Meadowbrook, Mr. Abernathy. He was a quiet, unassuming man who spent most of his time reading in the corner, but during one of our brief conversations I discovered he was a retired lawyer, specializing in estate and trust law. It was a stroke of luck, or perhaps fate, that brought him to my doorstep. Over the next few weeks I confided in Mr. Abernathy. I told him everything: Michael's callousness, Carol's greed, their systematic exploitation of my finances. He listened patiently, his eyes sharp and intelligent behind his thick glasses. When I finally laid out my plan, a slow smile spread across his face. "Mr. Walker," he said, his voice surprisingly strong, "I believe we can make this happen. It will require careful planning and precise execution, but I think we can indeed teach your son a valuable lesson." Abernathy's legal expertise and my detailed knowledge of my finances, we began to put the pieces in place. We meticulously documented every suspicious transaction, every instance of their manipulation. We drafted new legal documents, ensuring my assets would be protected and their access completely revoked. It was a delicate dance requiring secrecy and careful timing. I had to maintain the facade of a confused old man while simultaneously orchestrating a complex financial maneuver. The thrill of it, the feeling of taking back control, was exhilarating. It was like the old days when I was building my business, facing challenges head-on with strategy and determination. The weeks turned into months. Michael and Carol continued their charade, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Their visits remained infrequent, their conversations superficial. They'd often bring small gifts, trinkets they probably charged to my account, believing these paltry gestures would appease me. I accepted them with a weak smile, all the while my resolve hardening with each passing day. The moment was drawing near. The trap was set. All that was left was to spring it. The day I executed my plan was unremarkable on the surface. The sun shone through the window of my small room, casting long shadows on the worn carpet. I sat in my armchair, a picture of frail old age, a blanket draped across my lap. Michael and Carol were due for one of their perfunctory visits. When they arrived, Michael launched into his usual spiel about the market fluctuations and the expert advice he was receiving. Carol, as always, was subtly angling for more. "We were thinking of redoing the guest bathroom, Dad," she said, her voice sweet but with an underlying edge of expectation. "It would really increase the property value." "Michael, Carol," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "there's something I need to discuss with you." "What is it?" Michael asked, glancing at his watch. "It's about my estate," I said, watching their eyes sharpen with interest. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and with the help of a new friend I've made some changes." "Dad, you don't even remember what you had for breakfast." Michael's hand, which had been resting on the armrest, clenched into a fist. "Dad, what are you talking about?" he stammered, his voice losing its usual uveriness. I reached for a thick envelope on the side table. "These," I said, holding it up, "are the new legal documents. My will has been completely rewritten. The power of attorney you held has been revoked." You can't do that," Carol whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh, but I have," I said calmly, "and you won't believe what else I've done." I allowed myself a small, triumphant smile. "You see all those complex transactions you were making? All those withdrawals and transfers? They've been reversed. Every penny. Do you have any idea what you've done? And as for what I've done with it..." I paused for dramatic effect. "I've established an irrevocable trust. The beneficiary's not you, not Carol. but several charities that I've supported for years. Organizations that actually care about making the world a better place, not just lining their own pockets. Michael's face was a mask of shock and disbelief. Carol sank back into her chair, her eyes wide with a mixture of fury and panic. You've taken everything? Michael finally managed to choke out. Every last cent, I confirmed. You wanted to treat me like I was already gone? Well, consider this my final act. My inheritance is no longer yours to squander, but I remained unmoved, a sense of profound peace settling over me. The weight of their betrayal had been lifted. I had fought back and I had won. Over the following weeks, the fallout was spectacular. Michael and Carol descended into a whirlwind of legal challenges, none of which succeeded, thanks to Mr. Abernathy's meticulous work. Their lavish lifestyle crumbled. The new car was repossessed, the European vacation canceled, and their dream home was put on the market. Their friends, who had once fawned over their supposed wealth, now kept their distance. I watched it all from the quiet comfort of Meadowbrook, a sense of quiet satisfaction blooming within me. I used the remaining funds I hadn't donated to ensure my own comfort and care, no longer beholden to their whims. I made new friends among the residents, shared stories, and rediscovered simple joys. Michael and Carol made a few desperate attempts to reconcile, their voices dripping with false sincerity. But the trust was broken beyond repair. I saw them for who they truly were, selfish, greedy, and utterly devoid of genuine affection. I refused their calls and returned their letters unopened. The last time I saw Michael, he appeared unannounced at Meadowbrook, his clothes rumpled, his eyes hollow. He pleaded with me, his voice cracking with desperation. He spoke of financial ruin, of shame, of how their actions had cost them everything. I looked at him, my heart strangely unmoved. You said I was old and didn't know what I was doing, Michael, I said, my voice calm but firm. Perhaps you should have listened more closely. You were so busy counting my money you never noticed I was counting your character. And it came up short. Carol, I heard through the grapevine, had left him, unable to cope with their sudden fall from grace. Their world, the one they had so carelessly built on the assumption of my demise, had imploded. As for me, I finally felt free. The bitterness that had gnawed at me for so long had dissipated, replaced by a sense of quiet triumph. I had faced injustice and emerged victorious, not through anger or violence, but through intelligence and a steely resolve. My soul felt cleansed. I had taken all the money, not to hoard or to spite, but to reclaim my dignity and to ensure that my life's work would benefit those who truly deserved it. In the end, it wasn't just about the money. It was about justice, served cold, and with a profound sense of poetic satisfaction.